Hello, welcome to the Adobe Draw Basics workshop where you will learn the basics to get started in this free app that you can use on an iPad, and then you have the option of opening those graphics in Illustrator on a computer. So my name is Katie Morris and I teach pre-K through 12 art at Jackson Heights Schools, and today I'm going to tell you how to get started with this program. First, create your document. Then you're going to want to explore your options. You click on the size and drag it up to increase, down to decrease. Same with opacity. You can explore many different colors and the themes, and then you can also add a color that you like to your library if you would like to use it again. There are different brushes and they have pressure sensitivity, so this is great especially if you have an Apple Pencil, but even just using your finger you can get some nice variety in your lines. To erase, you can either just draw over it like I'm showing here, or you can also find a thicker part and you can just click to hold down and it will erase the entire object. You can create layers, which is really handy. You are able to add a photo or a sketch as an image layer and then put a draw layer on top of it. Today I'm going to show you how to use a photo as a base and then make a vector graphic based on that. So here I've put in a picture of a coneflower. I held down on the color button and then sampled the color that I wanted to use. So I'm starting to outline the petals. This is how I like to start, is by getting kind of a drawing on top of my photo. You can do it without a photo, obviously, but since I wanted to show you the features with sampling the colors, I decided to build on top of a photo for today. So now that the outline of the flower is pretty much done, I'm just gonna hide the photo. You can click on a layer and hit the eyeball button to make it disappear so it's easier to see what you have. I've created a new layer and I'm going to start doing some of the line details on top of it. I really like to work in layers so that way I can get rid of something easily if I don't like it, and I also have the freedom of rearranging things and just making more changes than if I made everything on the same layer to start with. So I like to sample a color and then adjust it a little bit with the color wheel to make it how I really want it to look. I did a screen recording of this to be able to show you how it works. The recording feature is not built into the program, but it was pretty easy to do on the iPad. So here I've pinched to zoom in and make sure I had all the gaps filled in. Once you have a closed shape, you can just hold down in the middle of it to fill it in with solid color. So that saves you a lot of time overdoing it all by hand. I hide layers a lot so I can see what's there, and then I turn them back on. So now I merged those two layers together. You can click on the top layer and select merge down. I've created a new layer on top of it to start to create the middle of the flower. So I filled that in solid and then hit it so I can do a new layer with the orange color that I see on top. So I figured out that the tapered brush was going to work really nicely to be able to come to a point. If you're not very familiar with graphics, the benefit of using Adobe Draw over just a regular digital paint program is that since it's a vector graphic, you are able to enlarge, scale these images to whatever size you want without losing quality. Where raster or pixel-based graphics, they're based on pixels, so you've seen that before where you enlarge something and then it gets kind of fuzzy or broken up into little blocks. That doesn't happen with vector graphics because it's based on formulas. So the computer kind of does the math for you and you don't lose quality when you change the size. I mentioned earlier that you have the option of opening these files up in the traditional Adobe Illustrator program. When you are finished, or at any point in your project, you have the option to share either an image, just save it on your computer, or to share as a link. But if you're logged into Adobe Illustrator and you're logged in with the same account that you're using Adobe Draw on, you can actually make it open right up on your computer, which is really handy. It just pops right open, and then each of the layers stays separate, and you're able to go in and edit, change colors, move things around. It's just a good starting point. Feels a little more natural sometimes to draw directly on a screen where you're not as removed as using a traditional graphics tablet. So here I've hid that layer again, and I'm going back and adding some more detail with a darker kind of rusty red color on the tip to make it match the colors that I was seeing in the coneflower seeds. Here I've just recently hit the plus sign to create a new draw layer, and I'm going back to add another layer of details with some different colors, trying to just bring up some more of that. I rearranged the layer of my orders by just dragging and dropping it. You can't exactly blend when you're using this type of program. You're creating shapes. You can turn the opacity down if you want some of the previous layer to show through, but you can't like smudge it. Okay, so I'm adding even more details here with another color, and I just continually hide and make it show again so I can see what it really looks like. Changing my size, going back and adding some thinner details. I tend to work from the bigger shapes towards the finer details. It's the easiest way for me to do it. So I like to sample colors and then just tweak it until it's exactly how I want it to be. In the themes, there are a lot of different color options, so you can look through there and find some really good choices, but you have complete freedom to create any color you want. And then, like I mentioned earlier, you can just hit the plus sign to add it to your library if you know you're going to want to come back to a specific color again. If you don't think you're going to want to come back to that color and you didn't save it, you can still use the color tool to sample and select that. So I've pinched to zoom in, and I'm just cleaning up my edges here. If you accidentally erase something you don't mean to, just hit the curved back arrow and it will undo your last step. It's like Control-Z on an iPad. Here I decided I needed some more depth behind the orange, so I've got a dark purple, and I made another layer to come back on top of the black. You can create a lot of layers on this, but there is a limit. When you reach that limit, or before, you can just go ahead and merge some of the layers that it's okay to have together again. Okay, now I'm going to start working on the stem. So I merged everything that was the main part of the flower together, just to make it easier if I needed to move or resize it. And I'm starting to work on the stem. You can see I turned down the opacity so I could sample the colors and see what's behind it to be able to trace the veins. So you just click on a layer and it brings up the options for opacity or rotating, resizing, all of those types of transformations. I decided to add another layer on top so I can get some of the shadows mixed in. Getting light, medium, and dark on my leaf. It's really easy to zoom in and out to see what you want to, where you want to work. See what you're really doing. And I turn the opacity back up so I can check and make sure my colors are correct. Here I'm just improvising. I decided it needed another leaf over there even though there wasn't one in the picture, so I'm just looking at the shapes behind it and adding that because we know that artists get to make changes to our references in order to create balance and order and just make it look right to us. So I merged all of those together, keeping the flower separate from the stem. And now I'm just going back to add the teeny tiny little details up at the top that would be behind the petals and merge that down together again. So you can duplicate a layer and then move it. So if you ever want to do a grouping and have something similar, that's what I would recommend starting with. Then you can rotate it and you can flip it horizontally so it's not exactly the same. That might look weird if you had it too similar, but you can transform what you have instead of starting from scratch. And that's what I love about doing vector graphics, is that you can resize it and it just stays crisp and clean and there's no breakdown of your image. I'm just doing some little adjustments where things didn't match up quite how I wanted them to. Here I decided just to change the color of some things to make them darker, so I was able to just hold down with my brush tool on the section that I wanted to change the color of. And I decided to add some shadows that would be cast from the petals onto the other leaf. So you always want to make sure you're drawing on the correct layer. There have been times where I realized I was on the wrong layer, so I would duplicate the layer that I didn't mean to draw on and erase the part that I didn't need, and then you can merge them back together. So that sounds a little bit confusing, but it's something you get the hang of the more you use the program. Just finding ways to kind of fix your little mistakes that you'll learn from. I like being able to tilt the canvas so you can find a more comfortable angle to work. Sometimes I'll zoom in really close, sometimes I zoom out more. And I'm just using the eraser brush to come back and clean up my edges and refine the shape to get it exactly how I want it to be. And I erased a little bit of this stem to put this leaf in front. Part of it's behind, part of it's in front. Once again, duplicated the layer so I can have a group of 3, changing the size. Rearranging my layer order. Playing around with the composition to figure out exactly how I want it to go. And then once again rearranging my layer order. I did need to change the shadows after I did that so that they're in a logical place. I decided in that circumstance it was faster just to paint over it, just to draw new shapes that covered up the old ones. And sampling the colors to come back and add more details back in. When you're satisfied, I like to merge things together just to kind of clean up my extra layers, and then you're good to go. You have the option of hiding your background layer. If you just double click, it changes it to transparent. I like to do that. And then you can hit the export button to save your image. You can just save it directly to your iPad. You can also save the image to your files in order to keep it as a PNG where you'll have a transparent background. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the built-in tools. There are a lot of shapes that are built in that will allow you to get straight edges, French curves, different shapes. So you're able to resize if you want to have parallel lines, or you can just use one side for straight. When you have one of those, it's going to let your brush go just on the dashed lines on the sides, whether you're erasing or drawing something. Once you hit the X to get out of it, then it's free game and you can change it however you want. So there are a lot of geometric shapes that are built in. Depending on the brush you use, it can make your edges irregular. So if you want it to be really thick and solid, make sure you keep even pressure as you trace around it. So you can do just part of it in order to build more interesting shapes, or you can trace the entire thing. I like that it shows you what angle you're at, so it's really easy if you want to get something regular, like at a 45-degree angle, for example. After you close out of it, you can hold down in the middle to make it filled in a solid color if you want to. You can also merge them together so that you create new shapes and just fill in parts of that. You could do some interesting exercises on just using layers of shapes and colors in order to make interesting compositions. Here I've duplicated the layer so that I can have the same shape and color repeated somewhere else without drawing it from scratch. The back arrow will allow you to go back multiple steps. You can also go forward if you undo something that you wish you hadn't done. Just click the curved arrow at the top and you can switch it to face forward instead of back. And to finish off, I'll just share some examples of graphics and other artwork that I've created with Adobe Draw. Here's a little fan art parody, a design for a mask that is inspired by my school mascot, my example for the style challenge, a Van Gogh sunflowers sticker design. Here's my Peapod, the happy little squirrel sticker design. Hello Neighbor inspired by Mr. Rogers. And a logo I made for the Jackson County Artwork last year.